300 people arrested during police crackdowns on some of those protests in the early hours of Wednesday at Columbia University in New York, and it's spread now in California.
Also now here in Britain, students have been setting up sit-in camps at some universities to protest Israel's war against Hamas. We're seeing pictures, these were in Newcastle yesterday. But what message is this sending to Jewish students? Well, Gary Mond is the chairman of the National Jewish Assembly. And maybe we start with that question, Gary. What message are these protests sending to Jewish students at these universities?
A highly negative one is the answer. What we're seeing is essentially intimidatory behaviour by the so-called pro-Palestinian students. And we're witnessing anti-Semitism growing all the time across the country in so many walks of life. Only yesterday in Manchester, a Jewish woman was thrown off a bus because she actually dared to criticise a pro-Palestinian sticker. We're seeing it everywhere now, and now it's the turn of the universities. And what we're witnessing in Columbia and other universities in the States is going to happen here. And this is something we must not tolerate.
Gary, I saw some of the protest leaders are saying we're doing this because universities in Britain are complicit in genocide in Gaza. Well, I fundamentally disagree with the fact there is a genocide going on in Gaza, but how can they argue that universities who are teaching the next generation of leaders and doctors and in this country are complicit in genocide in any shape or form?
They can't, and it's not their business to, quite frankly. What is happening is that left-wing ideals have taken over a whole generation of students. And this is leading, together with Islamist fundamentalists supporting them, this is leading to what we're seeing at the moment. And quite frankly, the universities need to get tough. If we see any form of intimidatory or threatening or violent behaviour on behalf of these demonstrating students, the universities need to suspend the students from their degrees, and if it means they don't graduate, so be it. Please don't forget there's one very important point that differentiates students from everybody else. The government, the British government, is still funding to the tune of approximately £30,000 on average every single student that's going through our university system. It is not the student's place. Yes, they can have freedom of speech, but it's not the student's place to misbehave in the way that they are doing, and they need to be disciplined firmly. Yeah. 2 points here. Firstly, these pro-Palestinian students obviously don't know their history. That since Israel was created in 1948, there's been 6 or 7 attempts and generous offers made by successive Israeli governments for two-state solutions. And these have all been turned down. So if they want peace, just read the history book and see what Hamas and their supporters are doing to stop that. Secondly, I'm starting to hear news that Hamas are rejecting the latest ceasefire proposal, which has been strongly supported by the British and American governments. If that is the case, we're going to almost certainly see Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu order the troops into Rafah, and this is going to accelerate the matter to a considerable extent. And so the police in this country need to be ready.
Gary, I can't see how Hamas will ever accept a ceasefire because they've not given up the hostages, and also they are committed to the eradication from the face of the planet, the State of Israel.
I completely agree with you, and it's a great shame that so many senior politicians across the world don't see it that way.
It doesn't look like there's any sort of peace solution in sight, though, Gary, at the moment, does it? How long do you think this conflict is going to go on?
The solution that has been spoken about would be for Israel to wipe out Hamas physically on the ground, and then working together with sensible Arab countries and the West to impose some kind of Marshall Plan on Gaza to eradicate the hatred that there is for Jews in that country, and to make sure that successive future generations of Gazans do not grow up to hate Jews and Israel. That is the way forward. Get rid of the violent people.
Events of the last 6 months will have done the polar opposite, though, Gary, won't they, for children who've been orphaned in Palestine?
You could have said the same thing about the Germans in Nazi Germany, and yet the Marshall Plan there succeeded over a few years. It will take many years Yes, of course. But then if one explains to these children, look, what happened on the 7th of October with so many Jews being murdered, raped, have babies being beheaded, then it will perhaps be possible to gain some kind of understanding of the role that Israel played.
Gary, can I just ask you on a personal level, as a Jewish man, have you experienced or seen or felt any uptake or increase in any anti-Semitism towards you or your family?
I can say that I personally have not, but I'm well aware of friends who have. And there are lots of little incidents. You're obviously familiar with the Gideon Falter incident that happened 2 weeks ago. Gideon Falter was not the first person to be treated this way. There have been many ordinary Jewish people who don't crave publicity, who don't want to get on the news, who are having the same, or being behaved to by the police in the same way near those hate marches. And I think that's important to appreciate that. It's not just Gideon Falter.
All right, that's Gary Mond, who's chairman of the National Jewish Assembly. Gideon Falter, just to remind people, was the gentleman, he's an activist, who was told by the police, he was dressed, you look very Jewish, or I think that was the expression the police officer used, we're advising you to walk away because your presence is provocative, and was told he'd be arrested if he didn't walk away, which was shameful. Particularly when the Metropolitan Police Commissioner then defended the copper, who was not a young, inexperienced copper, but an experienced sergeant's conduct.